The ice bore its way through Europa's frozen surface with mechanical precision, each revolution of the thermal drill bringing Dr. Mara Elson closer to what promised to be the archaeological find of the millennium. 3 kilometers below the Jovia moon's crystalline shell, something waited. Something that had been sleeping for eons. Depth markers at 2.8 kilometers, called out Shin Nakamura, the expedition's chief engineer, his voice crackling through the comm system. We should breach the artifact chamber within the hour. Mara wiped condensation from her helmet's visor and peered through the observation port of the drilling platform. The year 3120 had brought humanity many wonders, faster-than-light communication through quantum entanglement, terraforming technologies that had transformed Mars into a garden world, and the formation of the United Human Coalition that now governed 12 stellar systems. But nothing had prepared them for this. The gravitational anomaly had been detected 6 months ago by the Deep Space Monitoring Station orbiting Ganymede. Initial scans suggested a metallic object of impossible geometry buried beneath Europa's ice, something that defied every known principle of physics and archaeology. The Coalition's Xenoarchaeological Division had mobilized immediately, assembling the most experienced team of scientists, engineers, and linguists from across human space. Dr. Elson, a voice called from behind her. She turned to see Commander Sarachin approaching, her Coalition Navy uniform impeccably pressed despite the harsh conditions of the mobile research station they'd established on Europa's surface. The preliminary scans are complete. Whatever's down there, it's definitely not human in origin. Mara nodded, feeling a familiar thrill of discovery mixed with professional caution. As the Coalition's foremost expert in xenolinguistics, a field that had been purely theoretical until 3 years ago when humanity had discovered the first evidence of extinct alien civilizations, she had spent her career preparing for this moment. The ruins on Kepler 442b had yielded tantalizing glimpses of non-human intelligence, but nothing as intact or potentially functional as what lay beneath their feet. Energy signatures? Mara asked, pulling up the scan data on her tablet. That's what has everyone concerned, Commander Chin replied. The object is emitting a low-level electromagnetic field that seems to pulse in complex patterns. Our xenotechnology specialists think it might be some kind of containment system, but they can't be sure without direct examination. The drilling platform shuddered as the thermal bore encountered something harder than ice. Warning lights bathed the chamber in amber, and automated systems began their shutdown sequence. Contact. Nakamura's voice echoed through the facility. We've reached the artifact. Within minutes, the entire research team had gathered around the main display screen, watching in amazement as the deep probe cameras revealed their first glimpse of the alien object. It appeared to be a perfect dodecahedron, each face covered in intricate geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow when viewed directly. The material was unlike anything in the human database, not quite metal, not quite crystal, but something that seemed to exist in a state somewhere between the two. Magnificent, whispered Dr. James Harrison, the team's xenotechnology expert, his weathered face, marked by decades of exploring ancient ruins across the galaxy, showed an expression of wonder that Mara had rarely seen. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. Look at how the patterns integrate across multiple faces. It's as if the entire surface is one continuous mathematical equation. Mara was already analyzing the visible symbols, her trained eye picking out recurring motifs and structural patterns. The markings aren't random, she said, her voice tight with concentration. There's definitely a linguistic component here. The way certain symbols cluster around the vertices suggests they might be phonetic indicators, or possibly conceptual markers in a thought-based communication system. How long to establish a clean chamber? Commander Chin asked Nakamura. 6 hours to extend the atmospheric tube down to the artifact level. Another 4 to establish proper environmental controls. We'll want to be extremely careful. If this thing has been dormant for millennia, we don't want to trigger any defensive systems by accident. The next 10 hours passed in a blur of activity. Teams of engineers worked in rotating shifts to extend the research facility's atmospheric containment system down through the ice bore to create a pressurized environment around the artifact. Meanwhile, Mara and her linguistic analysis team worked feverishly to decode as much of the visible text as possible before direct contact. I'm seeing mathematical constants embedded in the symbol patterns, reported Dr. Sarah Kim, Mara's most gifted graduate student. Pi, the golden ratio, several prime number sequences. It's as if they're using universal mathematical truths as a kind of Rosetta Stone. Mara leaned back in her chair, rubbing her tired eyes. That makes sense if you're trying to communicate with an unknown species. Mathematics would be the one common language any technological civilization would recognize. Dr. Elson, Commander Chen's voice interrupted her thoughts. The chamber is ready. We're prepared to begin the first contact protocol whenever you give the word. Mara felt her heart rate accelerate. In all her years studying dead languages and extinct civilizations, she had never faced the possibility that her subjects might actually respond. Are all monitoring systems active? Full sensor array is online, confirmed Dr. Harrison. We'll record everything. Electromagnetic emissions, gravitational fluctuations, quantum field variations. If this thing so much as changes temperature, we'll know about it. The descent into the ice chamber felt like traveling back through geological ages. The walls of the bore showed clear stratification from Europa's long history, each layer marking another 1,000 years of accumulated ice. At the bottom, the alien artifact waited in its sterile white chamber, bathed in the soft glow of human lights. Up close, the dodecahedron was even more impressive. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, its surface seemed to ripple with an inner light that pulsed in slow, hypnotic rhythms. The symbols covering each face were clearly visible now, intricate beyond anything human artists had ever achieved. Beginning preliminary examination, Mara announced into her recorder, the artifact appears to be constructed from an unknown metamaterial with properties that shift depending on viewing angle and ambient electromagnetic conditions. The surface markings show characteristics consistent with both mathematical notation and linguistic communication. She approached slowly, her instruments detecting the faint energy field that surrounded the object. I'm reading coherent electromagnetic emissions in multiple frequency bands. The patterns are definitely artificial, too complex and regular to be natural phenomena. Dr. Harrison joined her, his scanning equipment humming softly. The power source appears to be internal, probably some kind of quantum battery or zero-point energy tap. Whatever it is, it's been running continuously for at least 50,000 years based on the geological dating of the ice layers above. 50,000 years, Mara murmured. That predates human civilization by tens of millennia. We could be looking at technology from a species that achieved interstellar travel when our ancestors were just learning to use fire. She reached out carefully with a haptic probe, its sensors designed to detect the slightest changes in the artifact's energy patterns. The moment the probe made contact with the surface, the chamber filled with a harmonic tone that seemed to resonate in their very bones. Energy spike, Dr. Harrison called out. We're seeing massive increases across all frequency bands. The symbols on the artifact's surface began to glow more brightly, and the pulsing rhythm accelerated. Mara watched in fascination as the patterns seemed to rearrange themselves, flowing like liquid across the solid surface. It's responding to contact, she said, her voice filled with wonder. The linguistic patterns are shifting. It's almost as if it's trying to adapt its communication method to our presence. Then, without warning, the artifact projected a three-dimensional holographic display that filled the chamber with swirling galaxies and star systems. Mathematical equations and symbolic representations flowed to the hologram like living text, accompanied by a musical tone that varied in pitch and complexity. Are you getting this? Mara called to the surface team. Every bit and byte came Commander Chen's voice through the comm. The quantum storage array is capturing the entire event. For 17 minutes, the artifact continued its display, presenting what appeared to be a comprehensive overview of galactic history, stellar evolution, and technological development. Mara watched in amazement as civilizations rose and fell across the cosmic tableau, marked by distinctive symbolic signatures that seemed to identify different species and their contributions to galactic knowledge. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the display vanished. The artifact's glow dimmed to its previous level, and the chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of human life support systems. That was incredible. Dr. Kim's voice came to the comm from the surface. I've never seen anything like it. The amount of information contained in that display. It could take years to decode properly. But Mara wasn't listening. Her attention was focused on the artifact itself, where new symbols had appeared on several faces. Symbols that definitely hadn't been there before. Dr. Harrison, she said quietly, "Are you seeing this?" The xenotechnology expert looked where she was pointing and drew in a sharp breath. Those are new markings. The artifact is actively rewriting itself, or updating its language parameters. Mara suggested. It may have used our initial interaction to analyze human communication patterns, and is now trying to establish a more effective interface protocol. She moved closer to examine the new symbols, her heart racing with the implications. If the artifact was actively learning from their contact, it suggested an intelligence behind it, not just a recording device, but an actual thinking entity. Mara, Commander Chen's voice carried a note of urgency. We're detecting some unusual activity in the satellite network. Several of our communication satellites have begun transmitting data packets that don't match any known protocols. A chill ran down Mara's spine. What kind of data packets? We're not sure yet, but they appear to be highly compressed and encrypted. More concerning is that the transmissions seem to be coordinated. Satellites across the entire Jovian system are participating in some kind of synchronized broadcast. Mara looked at the artifact with new apprehension. The gentle pulsing of its inner light suddenly seemed less benign, more purposeful. "Commander, I think we may have inadvertently activated more than just a communication system. I recommend we establish a quarantine protocol immediately." "Already in progress," Chen replied. "I'm ordering all personnel to maintain minimum safe distance from the artifact. Dr. Elson, I need you and your team back on the surface for an emergency briefing." As they prepared to leave the chamber, Mara took one last look at the alien dodecahedron. The new symbols on its surface seemed to pulse with their own rhythm now, independent of the artifact's overall energy pattern. Whatever they had awakened down here in the ice, she was beginning to suspect it was far more than just an ancient recording device. The implications were staggering. If this was truly an active alien intelligence, humanity was about to face its first contact with a living extraterrestrial entity. But if the strange satellite activity was any indication, this first contact might not be proceeding according to any human plans. The Coalition Deep Space Command Center on Ganymede was in controlled chaos when Mara's team arrived 12 hours later. Banks of quantum computers worked at maximum capacity, their cooling systems humming like mechanical insects as they processed terabytes of intercepted data from across the solar system. Admiral Rachel Torres, the ranking coalition officer in the Jovian system, met them at the security checkpoint. Her usually impeccable uniform showed signs of the stress of the past day. Wrinkled sleeves, coffee stains, and a hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't slept in far too long. "Dr. Elson, thank God you're here," Torres said, leading them quickly through the facility's main corridors. "The situation has escalated far beyond what we initially reported." She gestured toward a massive holographic display that dominated the command center's main floor. It showed a real-time map of human space, with normal traffic patterns overlaid in blue and anomalous activity highlighted in red. The amount of red was alarming. 36 hours ago, we had isolated incidents of unusual satellite behavior in the Jupiter system. Torres continued. Now we're seeing coordinated activity from Mars to the outer colonies. Communication satellites, navigation beacons, deep space monitoring stations. They're all participating in some kind of distributed network that we can't access or control. Dr. Harrison whistled softly. "That's impossible. Our satellites use quantum-encrypted communication protocols. There's no way an external system could penetrate them without the proper decryption keys." "That's what we thought, too," replied Commander Vincent Webb, the center's chief information officer. He was a thin man with prematurely gray hair, aged by years of dealing with increasingly sophisticated cyber threats. "But whatever intelligence is behind this appears to be using quantum tunneling effects to bypass our encryption entirely. It's rewriting security protocols from the inside out." Mara studied the display, noting the patterns of infected systems. "The distribution isn't random. Look at how it's spreading. It's following our own communication network topology, using our infrastructure against us." "Exactly," Webb confirmed. It's learning our network architecture and exploiting it with surgical precision. We've tried to isolate compromised systems, but every time we think we contained it, another cluster comes online. Torres led them to a smaller briefing room, where the walls were lined with classified reports and technical specifications. What we're about to show you is classified at the highest levels, she said, activating a privacy field that would prevent any electronic surveillance. 3 hours ago, we detected the first signs of physical replication. The hologram that appeared showed a detailed schematic of Communications Satellite Bravo 7, one of the deep space monitoring stations that help maintain contact between Earth and the outer colonies. But something was wrong with the image. Additional structures had been grafted onto the satellite's hull, forming geometric patterns that Mara recognized immediately. Those are the same design motifs we saw on the artifact, she said, her voice tight with concern. The alien intelligence isn't just using our satellites. It's physically modifying them. How is that possible? Dr. Kim asked. Satellites don't carry the kind of manufacturing equipment needed for major structural modifications. Webb pulled up another display, showing the satellite's internal schematics. That's the terrifying part. It's using the satellite's own maintenance nanobots, reprogramming them to disassemble non-critical components, and rebuild them according to alien specifications. Each infected satellite becomes a manufacturing platform for creating more advanced infiltration tools. Admiral Torres activated another hologram, this one showing Earth itself surrounded by the complex orbital infrastructure that humanity had built over centuries. Red markers indicated compromised systems, and there were far too many of them. The infection reached Earth's satellite network 4 hours ago, Torres said grimly. We estimate that within 48 hours, the alien intelligence will have control of our entire communication grid. Banking, transportation, government systems, everything depends on those satellites. Mara felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. As the person who had first activated the artifact, she bore some responsibility for unleashing this crisis. But more than that, as humanity's leading expert in alien communication, she might be the only one who could find a solution. What about the artifact itself? She asked. Is it still active? Very much so. Command has reported via secure quantum link from Europa. If anything, its activity has increased. The energy output has tripled, and we're detecting complex quantum field fluctuations that suggest it's actively communicating with the infected satellites. Dr. Harrison leaned forward. What kind of communication range are we talking about? Europa is hundreds of millions of kilometers from Earth. That's just it, Webb said. The communication appears to be instantaneous. Whatever method it's using transcends normal space-time limitations. We think it might be using quantum entanglement on a massive scale, or possibly manipulating higher-dimensional space. The implications were staggering. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light communication only recently, and their version required massive energy expenditures and carefully prepared quantum matrices. If the alien intelligence could communicate instantaneously across interstellar distances without apparent effort, their technology was orders of magnitude beyond human capabilities. Admiral, Mara said, I need to return to Europa immediately. If there's any chance of establishing meaningful communication with this intelligence, it has to be through the original artifact. Torres nodded. I was hoping you'd say that. We're preparing a specialized mission team with the best experts from across the coalition. But Mara, I have to be honest with you. If we can't establish communication and convince this intelligence to halt its infiltration, we may have to consider more drastic measures. What kind of measures? The artifact is buried under 3 kilometers of ice on Europa, Torres said quietly. A properly placed nuclear charge could bury it permanently under several more kilometers of molten ice that would refreeze into an impenetrable barrier. Mara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the environmental systems. Admiral, you're talking about potentially destroying the greatest archaeological discovery in human history. This could be our only chance to learn about an advanced alien civilization. I understand the scientific implications, Torres replied. But my primary responsibility is to protect human civilization. If this intelligence poses an existential threat to humanity, I won't hesitate to use any means necessary to stop it. The room fell silent as the weight of the situation settled over them. Humanity stood at a crossroads. They could attempt to communicate with their first living extraterrestrial intelligence, with all the risks it entailed, or they could choose the safety of isolation by destroying the artifact. How long do we have? Mara asked. Webb consulted his data tablets. Based on current progression rates, the alien intelligence will achieve complete control of Earth's satellite network within 36 hours. After that, it could potentially access ground-based systems through satellite-to-ground communication links. Banking, power grids, transportation networks, everything could be compromised. And the replication process? That's accelerating too, Webb said grimly. Each newly modified satellite becomes more efficient at converting others. We're seeing exponential growth in the infection rate. Mara made her decision. I need a small team, specialists in xenolinguistics, quantum communication, and alien technology. We'll return to Europa and attempt to establish two-way communication with the intelligence. If we can understand its motivations and capabilities, we might be able to negotiate a peaceful resolution. And if negotiation fails, Torres asked, then we'll gather enough intelligence about its capabilities to help you plan an effective counterstrike. Mara said, but I believe our best hope lies in communication, not destruction. Admiral Torres was quiet for a long moment, weighing the risks and benefits of each approach. Finally, she nodded. You have 48 hours. Dr. Elson will continue trying to slow the infection from this end, but if you can't establish meaningful contact by then, I'll have no choice but to implement the nuclear option. As the briefing concluded and the team began preparing for their return to Europa, Mara couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. The alien intelligence had remained dormant for 50,000 years. Why wake up now? What had triggered its activation beyond their simple physical contact with the artifact? More troubling was the sophisticated nature of its infiltration strategy. This wasn't a random awakening of some ancient defense system. The intelligence was displaying complex understanding of human technology and society, adapting its approach with surgical precision. It was almost as if it had been studying humanity for some time before revealing itself. The race back to Europa would take 18 hours, even using the fastest ships in the Coalition fleet. 18 hours while an alien intelligence continued to spread its influence throughout human space, growing stronger and more entrenched with each passing moment. As Mara boarded the transport ship that would carry her team back to the Jovian moon, she wondered if they were already too late. The research facility on Europa had been transformed during Mara's absence. What had once been a small archaeological expedition had become a full military scientific installation, with additional prefabricated modules extending like metallic tentacles across the frozen landscape. Defense turrets tracked the movement of any approaching vessels, and a massive communications array reached toward the turbulent Jovian sky like a technological forest. Welcome to Forward Base Alpha, Commander Chin said as she met Mara's team at the landing pad. Admiral Torres wasn't taking any chances. We now have a full battalion of Coalition Marines and enough firepower to level half this moon if necessary. Mara felt a stab of anxiety as she looked at the military preparations. Has there been any change in the artifact's behavior? Constant evolution, Chin replied, leading them toward the main research complex. The energy output continues to increase, and we're detecting new types of quantum emissions that our instruments can barely register. Dr. Harrison's team has identified at least 6 different communication protocols operating simultaneously. They pass through multiple security checkpoints, each staffed by heavily armed Marines who scan them with devices Mara didn't recognize. The tension in the facility was palpable. Everyone moved with the crisp efficiency of people who knew they might be humanity's last line of defense. The main laboratory had been expanded to accommodate additional analysis equipment and a new generation of quantum computers specifically designed for decoding alien communication protocols. Dr. Kim was already there, surrounded by holographic displays showing complex mathematical relationships and symbolic patterns. Mara, she called out as they entered, I've made some breakthrough discoveries in the linguistic analysis. The alien intelligence isn't just communicating, it's teaching. Mara hurried over to examine Kim's work. The displays showed the progression of symbols that had appeared on the artifact's surface, organized chronologically and cross-referenced with human communication attempts. Look at this pattern, Kim continued, highlighting a sequence of symbols that had evolved over the past 24 hours. Initially, the intelligence was using highly abstract mathematical concepts, but as it intercepted our communication attempts, it began incorporating elements of human language structure. It's literally learning to speak to us. Dr. Harrison joined them, his expression grim. That's not all it's learning. We've detected sophisticated probing attempts targeting our computer systems. It's not just analyzing our language. It's studying our entire technological infrastructure. To what end? Mara asked. That's what we need to find out, Harrison replied. But the level of analysis is remarkable. It's identified vulnerabilities in our systems that our own security experts missed. Whatever this intelligence is, it's operating on a cognitive level far beyond anything we've encountered. Commander Chin activated a secure communication link to Admiral Torres. Admiral, Dr. Elson's team has arrived, and we're ready to begin the communication attempt. Torres's voice came through with crystal clarity despite the vast distance. Understood, Commander. Be advised that the situation here has deteriorated further. The alien intelligence has gained control of Earth's primary communications network and is beginning to probe civilian infrastructure. We're running out of time. Mara felt the pressure of the moment weighing on her. Somewhere above them, an alien intelligence was spreading its influence throughout human space, potentially threatening the survival of their entire civilization. And their only hope of stopping it lay in successfully communicating with an artifact buried beneath kilometers of alien ice. Dr. Kim, what's your assessment of the intelligence's communication capabilities? Mara asked. Extraordinary, Kim replied immediately. It appears to be capable of processing multiple linguistic frameworks simultaneously. I've identified elements of mathematical notation, symbolic logic, emotional resonance patterns, and what appears to be direct conceptual transmission. It's as if it's trying to establish communication on every possible level at once. That suggests a level of desperation, Mara mused, or perhaps urgency. It needs to communicate something to us, and it's using every method it can devise to ensure the message gets through. Dr. Harrison looked up from his instrument panels. There's something else. The quantum signatures from the artifact suggest it's not operating alone. We're detecting evidence of multiple discrete intelligence patterns working in coordination. Multiple intelligences? Mara asked. You mean there's more than one alien entity involved? That's my assessment, Harrison confirmed. The communication patterns show distinct stylistic differences that suggest separate personality matrices. We might be dealing with an entire civilization compressed into that single artifact. The implications were staggering. If the artifact contained not just one alien intelligence, but an entire society, the complexity of establishing meaningful communication would increase exponentially. Different entities might have different motivations, different understandings of humanity, different opinions about how to proceed. We need to go down there, Mara decided. Direct, face-to-face communication is our best chance of success. Absolutely not, Commander Chin said firmly. The artifact's energy output is now beyond safe exposure levels for unprotected humans. We've had to evacuate the lower chamber entirely. Then we use remote communication equipment, Mara insisted. But we need to establish real-time, two-way communication. Everything we've attempted so far has been reactive. The intelligence responds to our presence or our probes, but we haven't achieved genuine dialogue. Kim pulled up a new display showing communication protocols she had developed. I've been working on a universal translation matrix based on the mathematical constants the intelligence has been using. If I'm right about the underlying structure, we should be able to establish a basic vocabulary within a few hours. How basic? Mara asked. Concrete concepts, simple relationships, mathematical principles. But it would be a foundation we could build on. The intelligence seems remarkably adaptive. Once it understands our communication method, it should be able to expand the vocabulary rapidly. Commander Chin checked with the security teams. We can establish a secure communication link to the lower chamber, but I want full hazmat protocols in place. If that thing starts emitting dangerous radiation or toxic particles, I want to be able to evacuate everyone instantly. The next 4 hours were spent in intensive preparation. Kim's translation protocols were loaded into the facility's most advanced quantum computers, while Harrison's team calibrated sensors to monitor every aspect of the artifact behavior. Mara herself spent the time studying everything they had learned about the intelligence, looking for patterns that might indicate its motivations and goals. When they were finally ready, the main laboratory fell silent except for the soft hum of electronic equipment. On the primary display, they could see the artifact in its chamber 3 kilometers below, its geometric surfaces now glowing with an intensity that made direct observation impossible. Beginning communication attempt, Mara announced, activating Kim's translation protocol. This is Dr. Mara Elson of the United Human Coalition. We wish to establish peaceful communication with the intelligence within the artifact. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the artifact's glow intensified, and new symbols began appearing on its surface at a rate far faster than any human could track. The translation computers worked frantically to process the incoming data stream. "We're getting a response," Kim called out. "The initial message appears to be a greeting. It's expressing recognition of our attempt to communicate and indicating willingness to engage in dialogue." Mara felt a thrill of success mixed with deep apprehension. They had achieved first contact with an alien intelligence, but they still had no idea what that intelligence wanted or whether it posed a threat to humanity. "Can you ask about its intentions regarding our satellite network?" Mara requested. Kim input the query, translating the concepts into the mathematical symbolic framework they had established. The artifact's response came almost immediately, a complex stream of symbols that took the computers several minutes to decode. "This is interesting," Kim said slowly. "It's expressing something like surprise or confusion about our concern. It says it's not attacking our satellites. It's improving them." "Improving them how?" Commander Chen demanded. Another exchange of symbols flowed between the human computers and the alien artifact. Kim's expression grew more troubled as she read the translation. "It says it's upgrading our communication systems to enable proper contact with its home civilization," Kim reported. "It claims our current technology is insufficient for interstellar communication and that it's making modifications necessary for integration." The word hung in the air like a threat. Integration could mean many things, from peaceful cooperation to complete assimilation, and they still had no clear picture of what the alien intelligence's ultimate goals might be. "Ask it to stop the modifications," Mara said. "Tell it we need to understand the implications before any changes are made to our systems." The response that came back was immediate and unambiguous. Even through the imperfect translation protocol, the meaning was clear. The modifications could not be stopped. They were too far advanced, and halting them now would cause catastrophic damage to the very systems the intelligence was trying to improve. Humanity was caught in a trap of its own making. By activating the artifact, they had initiated a process that was now beyond their control. The alien intelligence claimed to be helping them, but its help might destroy everything humans had built. "We need more information," Mara said grimly. "Ask it about its origins, its civilization, its long-term plans for humanity." But as Kim began inputting the new queries, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Commander Chen rushed to her communication console, her face pale with alarm. "Admiral Torres is ordering immediate evacuation," Chen announced. "The alien intelligence has just gained access to Earth's military satellite network. We're looking at potential weapons systems under alien control. The race against time had just become a desperate fight for survival." The evacuation order created controlled chaos throughout Forward Base Alpha, but Mara knew they couldn't leave now. They were on the verge of meaningful communication with the alien intelligence, and breaking off the dialogue might eliminate any chance of a peaceful resolution. "Commander Chun," Mara said firmly, "I need 15 more minutes. We're so close to understanding what this intelligence wants." "Absolutely not," Chen replied, her authority clear in her voice. "Admiral Torres has declared a code red emergency. Earth's defense systems could be compromised at any moment, which is exactly why we need to maintain communication," Mara insisted. "If the intelligence has hostile intentions, we need to know now. If it doesn't, we might be able to convince it to halt the infiltration voluntarily." Dr. Kim looked up from her translation console, her expression urgent. "Mara's right. The intelligence is trying to tell us something important. The last few symbol sequences suggest it's concerned about something, possibly some kind of danger it's trying to warn us about. Commander Chin hesitated, torn between her orders and the possibility that they might be abandoning humanity's only chance for survival. Around them, military personnel continued their evacuation procedures, but the Core's scientific team remained at their stations. 5 minutes, Chin finally decided. But at the first sign of hostile action from the artifact, "We're out of here." Mara turned back to the communication interface, her mind racing. In 5 minutes, she needed to extract enough information to either resolve the crisis or provide Admiral Torres with the intelligence needed to stop the alien infiltration permanently. "Ask it about the danger," she told Kim. "What is it trying to warn us about?" The symbols that flowed across the artifact's surface in response were more complex than anything they had seen before, incorporating mathematical relationships and conceptual frameworks that pushed their translation protocols to their limits. Kim worked frantically to decode the message, sweat beading on her forehead despite the facility's cool temperature. It's talking about something called the Devourers," Kim said slowly. "Entities that consume technological civilizations. The intelligence says its people encountered them millennia ago, and that the modifications to our satellites are defensive preparations." Defensive against what? More symbols flowed from the artifact, accompanied by holographic projections that filled the chamber with images of cosmic destruction. Entire star systems went dark as something invisible passed through them, leaving behind empty space where thriving civilizations had once existed. The Devourers followed technological emanations. Kim continued translating. "They're attracted to electromagnetic signatures from advanced civilizations. Our satellite networks, our interstellar communications. We've been broadcasting our location to them for decades." Dr. Harrison looked up from his sensor readings, his face pale. That would explain the urgency of the modifications. If the intelligence is telling the truth, our entire communication infrastructure might be acting as a beacon for hostile entities. "How long do we have?" Mara asked. The artifact's response was immediate and terrifying. The holographic display showed the movement of something vast and dark through interstellar space, following the traces of electromagnetic radiation back to their source. Based on the artifact's calculations, the Devourers would reach human space within 6 months. "This is insane," Commander Chin said, watching the cosmic horror unfold in the holographic display. "You're asking me to believe that there are entities out there that hunt entire civilizations?" "It would explain why we found so few traces of alien life," Dr. Harrison mused. "If most technological civilizations are destroyed shortly after achieving interstellar communication, we'd only find ruins and abandoned artifacts." Mara felt the pieces clicking into place. That's why this intelligence has been dormant for so long. Its people must have hidden themselves after their encounter with the Devourers. The artifact isn't just a communication device. It's a warning system. And we triggered it by activating our first faster-than-light communication network 3 years ago, Kim added. Our quantum entanglement broadcasts must have generated exactly the kind of signature the intelligence was programmed to detect. The implications were staggering. Humanity had unknowingly announced its presence to cosmic predators, and now an ancient alien intelligence was desperately trying to prepare them for an encounter that could determine the survival of their entire species. "Ask it what we need to do," Mara said urgently. "How do we defend ourselves against these Devourers?" The artifact's response was complex, involving technical specifications that strained their translation capabilities. But the basic message was clear. Humanity's current technology was insufficient. The modifications to their satellite network were the first step in upgrading their defenses, but much more would be needed. "It wants to help us build shield generators," Kim translated. "Devices that can mask our electromagnetic signatures and make us invisible to the Devourers. But the technology required is far beyond our current capabilities. So it needs to complete the modifications to our satellites," Dr. Harrison realized. "They're not weapons platforms. They're components in a planetary defense system." Commander Chin was listening to reports from the surface, her expression growing more concerned. Admiral Torres reports that the modifications have spread to 90% of Earth's satellite network. Our defense forces are mobilizing, but they don't know what they're supposed to be fighting. Mara made a decision that could determine the fate of human civilization. Tell Admiral Torres that the alien intelligence is not hostile. It's trying to save us from something much worse. Based on what evidence? Chin demanded. We have only the word of an entity that has just demonstrated the ability to take control of our entire communications infrastructure. Based on the fact that if it wanted to destroy us, it could have done so already, Mara replied. The modifications to our satellites could just as easily be weapons as defensive systems. The intelligence chose to help rather than harm. She turned back to the communication interface, asking how we can verify its claims. We need proof that the Devourers exist and that they're actually heading toward our space. The artifact response included detailed astronomical data, star charts showing the path of the Devourers through the galaxy, electromagnetic signatures that could be detected by human instruments, and projected arrival times based on their observed velocity. It was offering evidence that could be independently verified. Dr. Kim, transmit this data to the Deep Space Command Center on Ganymede, Mara ordered. If the intelligence is telling the truth, our deep space monitoring system should be able to detect traces of the Devourer's passage through nearby star systems. Done, Kim replied, uploading the star charts and electromagnetic signatures to the quantum communication network. Commander Chin received a priority message and listened intently before turning back to the team. Admiral Torres has agreed to delay the nuclear strike pending verification of the astronomical data, but she's giving us 6 hours maximum. If the intelligence can't provide convincing proof of these Devourers, she's going to assume it's a deception and destroy the artifact. 6 hours to verify the existence of cosmic entities that consumed entire civilizations. 6 hours to convince Admiral Torres that humanity's best hope for survival lay in trusting an alien intelligence that had infiltrated their most critical systems. 6 hours to prevent a decision that might doom their species to extinction. We need to go deeper, Mara said, studying the artifact's latest communications. The intelligence has been trying to show us something specific. Look at these symbol patterns. They're not just describing the Devourers, they're indicating a location. Dr. Harrison checked his readings. The quantum signature suggests there's more to this artifact than what we can see on the surface. The energy patterns indicate a much larger structure, extending down into Europa's ice. How much larger? Mara asked. Based on the quantum resonance patterns, possibly several kilometers in diameter, we might be looking at just the tip of a massive installation that extends deep into the moon's interior. The revelation changed everything. If the artifact was merely the surface component of a much larger alien facility, the intelligence they were communicating with might have access to technology and resources beyond anything they had imagined. Commander Chun, Mara said, I need permission to go deeper into the ice. If there's a larger facility down there, it might contain the proof we need to convince Admiral Torres. Chun shook her head immediately. Too dangerous. We don't know what's down there, and we can't risk losing our only Zen-linguistics expert. But we also can't risk making the wrong decision based on incomplete information, Mara countered. If the intelligence is telling the truth about the Devourers, then destroying the artifact could be humanity's death sentence. We need to see what's really down there. Dr. Kim looked up from her console. There's another consideration. The intelligence has been trying to show us something specific in the deeper ice. The symbol patterns keep referencing a repository of some kind, possibly a database of information about the Devourers and how to fight them. The weight of decision pressed down on Mara. Above them, Admiral Torres was preparing to potentially destroy humanity's first alien contact. Around them, an ancient intelligence was desperately trying to communicate information that might be crucial for their species' survival. And somewhere in the darkness below, alien secrets waited to be discovered. The next few hours would determine whether humanity faced a future with new allies or in absolute isolation. Either way, Mara knew that nothing would ever be the same.